business items today to consider, and these reports make an important contribution to changing our council. I also have to advise members that I have a late item of business which this committee will need to consider today. The report relates to very recent correspondence with the Scottish Government in relation to this Council's financial settlement 2015-16. The letter of the 11th of February indicates the Scottish Government will make available additional funding of £10 million across Scotland to support the maintenance of teacher numbers as long as councils support the requirement of the local government finance package. The package requires councils to maintain a council tax freeze, secure places for all probationers who require one under the teacher induction scheme, and protect teacher numbers in order to secure the maintenance of pupil-teacher ratio for local authority schools at 2014-15 levels, and also the total number of teachers employed by local authorities across Scotland from the figures reported to the Pupil and Teacher Census published in December 2014 as a minimum. Agreement to the terms of the Scottish Government settlement deal would secure funding of £303,000, and this would come from the national figure of £10 million. This is approximately £600,000 below the funding required to freeze teacher numbers. However, the sanctions indicated for failure to agree the settlement would be £3.440 million. That's your council tax in £41 million and the £10 million. That's a percentage of that, so we'd lose £3.44 million. It would be my intention for this item of business to be taken after we have approved the minutes, and at that point members will receive a copy of the committee report and we come in a short recess to allow members to read the report. In the audience today, we have Stephen Rogerson, a modern apprentice with the Listen to Us project. Stephen is going to provide the administrative support for the Looked After and Carers Champions Board. Stephen is very keen to learn what goes on at our committee meetings and how we manage business. Can I have the Sederunt apologies?
Thank you, Leader. 16 members present. Apologies from Councillor Dykes, Councillor Gilroy and Councillor Marshall.
Any declarations of interest? No. The minute of the meeting, the 20th of January 2015. Is that Jeff that's moving that? And seconded by Colin Smith. Yep. Okay, if we move on to the late item of business, as I said, this report provides information on recent developments in respect of the Scottish Government requirements in relation to teacher numbers, pupil-teacher ratio, and the financial implications for the upcoming financial year for 2015-16. I'll get somebody to pass around the report. We'll have a recess for 10 minutes. Members can see from the report, we are required to write to the Deputy First Minister by the 20th of February, confirming that we accept the settlement package, including the late change to the conditions on teacher numbers to avoid the financial sanctions. At paragraph 4.2, the financial sanctions have been detailed, and these would be in order, as I've said before, about £3.4 million. So whilst we would normally welcome the additional £10 million, it can be seen in section 5 of the report that it's based on existing teaching numbers and makes no recognition of the current pupil-teacher ratios. As a result, despite Dumfries and Galloway having pupil-teacher ratios well below the national average, we will receive no benefit for this in comparison to those councils who have pupil-teacher ratios well above the national average. The decision we need to take today is to agree that we will meet the terms of the funding settlement package and note that Director of Education will present a report to the next meeting of the Education Committee identifying options to address the funding shortfall while maintaining teacher numbers. I'll ask Paul to present the report or ask if there's any further to add in it.
Thank you, Leader. No, I mean, I think you've really summarised the main points. And during the budget process, we advised members of the settlement terms attached to the funding package. Those have been updated subsequent to budget setting, and as reflected that paragraph 4, or section 4 rather, of the report The choice we really have is between receiving the extra £300,000, which would create a £600,000 shortfall against the initial figures, or to look towards a £3.4 million sanction from the Scottish Government if we don't agree to maintain teacher numbers. So as reflected at paragraph 4.3, I think the Council has little choice other than to accept the terms of the revised settlement deal, and the issue of how we actually accommodate the £600,000 issue will be referred to the next meeting of the Education Committee. Thank you.
Okay, members. Gail.
Just a quick question. It looks as if we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. The teacher ratio numbers that were taken, that was last September. Is the 12.7 accurate as of today or last September?
It's accurate as today. Yeah. Sorry, Jane.
Leader, I'm sorry. I know about this, but obviously I haven't been able to really very, very carefully consider the issues that arise from this. It seems to me incredibly depressing that in past years, when I first came onto this council, the idea was to get away from numbers and ratios and rather crude effects and to look at the outcomes. And my understanding, and actually I'm sorry we don't have the education officers here today, is that in fact we had been doing what was wanted. We'd been, I think, attempting to reduce the gap between those children who are attaining, who are not attaining. We have been achieving better looked after children education results. And it seems to me terribly sad that actual fact that we are being, I think, penalised because of what is going on nationally. I am an independent councillor. I have no feelings either way with which political party is in power at any particular time. I want to do the best for the children here. And I think it's important, actually, Leader, that we try and get this message out to people that this is not a good thing that is happening generally. I don't mean, you know, whether it's simply trying to show that there are, it's an easy figure to tell people that there are more teachers being employed, etc., etc. It's about a rather more complex effect that happens here. So I'm sorry, in a long and complicated way, I'm saying I agree with you. We've got no option here, but it's really frustrating that we're doing the right thing. I think things are going the right way, and we are about to be penalised. And I think that's a terribly important message to get out. And I would beg you, Leader, not to make it a party political issue. I understand the temptation would be enormous, but I think we must explain to the people that it's just not right what is being done to us.
Thank you. Ian first.
Thanks, Leader. I think most has been said by Jane. Yeah, it's been covered. But I think, just for my reassurance, is what we're saying is in as far as 3.2 concerned, that if we don't agree to one of them, it accounts for all. I mean, I think we're not just talking about teacher numbers here, are we, the ratio? It's, if we don't commit to the teacher ratio, it affects the other two elements contained within. So it's all or nothing, just for that reassurance.
Yeah, it's all, it's the council tax, you know, the £1.8 million we get from that, and then it's the £41 million, and it's the additional £10 million. So if we didn't sign up, we'd lose the ratio of that. Am I correct?
That's right. Well, just as far as that, I do think, same as what Councillor Maitland's saying there, that we're being backed into a corner here. We haven't got anywhere else to go but to go forward and agree to this, and especially with the amount of time that we've got to react to this. Again, our ratio numbers are quite well. Like I say, we're above the national average in Scotland. So in our case, certainly Dumfries and Galloway, it's attainment we should be looking at. It is not the ratio of teachers to numbers. That I can understand why there's any political party would want to protect jobs, but that's what this is about as far as I can see. It's not about the actual attainment levels and the better education to the people in Dumfries and Galloway or even further afield in Scotland. So I have no option but to agree with recommendations contained.
Peter then.
Thank you. I just want clarification on the actual level that we're expected to go. It is 12.7 as opposed to 13.5, is that correct?
Yeah, it's 12.7. Over the past 5 years, we've kept the ratio under the 13.5 that the Scottish Government asked us. It's been from 12.5 to 12.7. We were looking at, adjusting that slightly, but we're still well below the 13.5. I think the maximum it would be was 13 at one time. Now, again, we were looking at that not just on a number basis, but we were keeping our side of the bargain, if you want. Complying with the Scottish Government ratio of under 13.5. So yes, yep.
So we'd be penalised if we went over 12.7?
We would, yep. Sorry, it's Ivor first. And then.
Thank you, Leader. Rather disappointing the fact that we signed up, was it 7 years ago as a council or 8 years ago, to a single outcome agreement. However, it seems to be that we're basing our model on inputs and outputs rather than outcomes. I must admit, I agree with Councillor Maitland where she's rather disappointed. She feels like we're penalised. We've been, I would say, good boys and actually achieved the 13.5 or less. We're being penalised for that, and those who haven't are being rewarded. They're getting money to keep their numbers where they are. It takes a bit of stomaching, that one, I would say. I'm not keen on that at all. One of the questions I would ask, though, is with regard to the recommendations, we're being asked to agree something and then note that there will be savings options come forward. What will those savings options be? Because if they aren't deliverable or aren't palatable, how can we then achieve where we want to be?
That's a good question, but I think the Education Committee would have to decide about how they want to look at this. And then, they need to come up with options, and if the options that they come up with are, we're happy with them. I'm not saying they would be happy with them, but if they come forward with some options and that, then we need to take cognizance of that and have a look at that. Sorry, yeah, Gail.
Would that then go to full council afterwards? Because the budget setting is a full council decision, and if we have to make budget decisions in isolation at education, that'll set a precedent for other committees as well.
As far as I'm aware, but I'll let others answer that. But if there's any adjustments, it usually goes to the service committee first. It's not unique. This. No, I know it is. Well, it's just 600. We do make adjustments all the time in budgets. Whether it's pluses or minuses, and it goes to the service committee to decide that. But okay, Paul, is that okay?
Yeah, just as you said, the options themselves will be, the detail of those options will be an issue for the Education Committee. But one thing I would point out is that we're talking about less than 0.5% of the education budget. And I've had initial discussions with the Director of Education on some of the options they might be able to bring forward, and we're jointly comfortable and we work together to make sure that the Education Committee are presented with appropriate options at that time in March.
Oh, Ivor, you want back in, Ray?
Will we have the opportunity to consult on those options, as we had done with the full budget as we went forward?
I'm not sure about the detail of the consultation arrangements, but what I would say is that the budget's been agreed, the cash limits have been set for the service committees, and we always have issues that arise during the course of a financial period, and the Education Committee will identify the options as they come forward, and they'll be part of the normal consultation arrangements. I wasn't anticipating a specific consultation process for these particular measures.
Colin?
I think other members have highlighted the fact that attainment rather than crude teacher numbers should be the way in which we measure educational achievement. But I think what's so perverse about this is it's not even crude teacher numbers that we're now measuring it on, because the Scottish Government previously had a policy of a ratio of 13.5. Dumfries and Galloway has a ratio of 12.7, but actually we're being told that you no longer have to just meet the 13.5 target, you've got to stick to 12.7. And what's so perverse about the allocation of funding here is that millions of pounds of that funding will go towards things other than education. The vast majority of local councils, because they had cut their teacher numbers previous years, had no plans to cut teacher numbers this year, but they're receiving about £6 million of that £10 million when they had no plans to reduce teacher numbers. So every single one of those councils will use that extra funding for things other than cutting teacher numbers. So the Scottish Government have allocated £10 million effectively to freeze teacher numbers. The vast majority of that funding will go on things other than freezing teacher numbers. And ironically, we've got a shortfall because of the way in which the funding's been allocated, which means we as a council will have to find savings within our education budget. So for a £10 million additional funding in education, most of it's not even going on education. And I just think that's absolutely perverse. Either you have a crude target of 13.5 or you don't have a crude target of 13.5. And the fact that these goalposts have been moved in this way means that we're being penalised once again. We were penalised when it came to the allocation of funding for freezing the council tax because we had the lowest council tax in mainland Scotland. Now we're being penalised because we've got one of the best teacher-pupil ratios in Scotland, and local authorities that have got a ratio of 14 or 15 or 16, way above the Scottish Government's target, will be receiving funding to stay above the Scottish Government target. I mean, I do think that, you know, we have no choice but to accept this deal, obviously, but I do think that in response to the Minister, when you do have to write to say that we have to accept this deal, I do think we should make the point that we believe that the allocation of funding of just £303,000 to Dumfries and Galloway is a poor settlement for this region.
Okay, got Jeff then Jim.
Yeah, much of what I was going to say has already been said. I think it's a very unfair distribution. We are being penalised. I mean, over the last few years, our ratios generally hovered around about 12.5, 12.6, 12.7. So we have protected the education budget, and attainment has gone up year on year within Dumfries and Galloway Council. And it is disappointing that the government is just fixed on this very crude figure of 13.5 as the target. We're way below the target. Other councils are way above the target because they've cut teacher numbers in previous years. And as Colin says, they actually have been rewarded because it's just a distribution on a per capita basis. You know, it's got nothing to do with the way in which education is being achieved in any of these local authorities. And I think what we also need to remember is we've got 3 other reviews going on in education at the moment, and we don't know what this means in terms of what we can do within those 3 reviews. So, you know, everything's in effectively a state of flux now because of this late decision by the government to fix on this this ratio and to maintain teacher numbers. So that's something else which we need to think about as well.
Okay, Jim.
Thanks, Leader. Councillor Smith has already alluded to the focus on crude teacher numbers. The teachers provide a very valuable contribution, but there is no cognizance whatsoever of the contribution played by the various categories of support for learning assistance. And my fear is that this move will place councils in the invidious position of having to consider even more swingeing cuts to support for learning assistance. I would be very, very concerned about the potential impact of this.
Okay, Tom.
Thanks, Leader. Now, I find it a wee bit ludicrous that if we accept this 303,000 extra, it still means our education budget is down by 600,000. If we don't, our overall budget is down by 3.4 million. I mean, it doesn't make sense, and in view of the fact that we've got a better pupil-teacher ratio than just about any other authority in Scotland, we get penalised and other authorities don't. I mean, I think what is interesting, it's typical of the centralisation and micromanagement by the SNP government, but I think that the silence from our SNP colleagues in the committee is quite deafening, considering that they were going to cut 29 teachers in their budget that was beaten by the administration budget. So I find it's a wee bit galling that we have the SNP taking one line at the national level and their local representatives taking a totally different line.
Okay, Rob.
I remember, I think it was perhaps only the last budget, a particularly fierce exchange between Councillor Nicholson and myself when they were scrutinising the then administration's proposals. And curiously, it centred on the issue of teacher numbers and the level to which they might or might not be being reduced by those proposals. It's fascinating the difference that a year makes. I can't help but observe that had our procedural motion on budget setting day not been ruled incompetent, we wouldn't be in this situation now, because we'd be setting a budget with much more information than we had then. And perhaps that should be reflected on.
That is, that is completely misleading, that statement, Councillor Davison. What we set the council tax, as most council have set a budget, we're not unique in confirming our budget, our council tax level, which in effect is our budget. It was emphasised at full council that funding levels do change and that we have always dealt with them routinely as they arise. That's what we're doing today. The SNP budget's tabled on the 5th of February cut teacher numbers by nearly 30. And I think Councillor McCortley's actually emphasised that. The actual allocation, but if we went down that road that that you were proposing, the actual allocation, if you look at Angela Constance's letter, will be based on final numbers as reported in the People Teacher Census published in December 2015, which is this year. Now, these are indicative figures, so I don't know how long you're wanting us to wait, maybe the next budget time. Councillor Smith?
Yeah, Chair, I think we do have to nail this myth that's been perpetrated by the SNP group about budget setting process. The full council has responsibility to set the council tax level, and that's what we did in February. The idea that somehow you set a budget and nothing will change, despite the fact that circumstances change all the time, it's complete nonsense. Last week we had the announcement from the Heritage Lottery Fund that we had been unsuccessful with the bid for the Stranraer Townscape bid. Yet that was contained within the budget. Are the SNP saying we should have delayed the budget to await the outcome of the Heritage Lottery Fund? Are they saying we should delay the budget, every single budget decision, until we hear additional information from the government? We actually get announcements from the government all the way through the year. And the budget, and if members of the SNP would like to look through all the Policy and Resources papers for the last year, they'll see that every single Policy and Resources Committee meeting that we've had an update on revenue, the budget has been amended as a result of other factors coming into play. So this idea that somehow delaying it for a week would mean that we could set a different budget is complete nonsense. None of us have in front of us today proposals to save the additional £606,000. Now, I'm presuming the SNP don't have any proposals on the table. They've had more than a week now. They want to delay the budget for a week. Do you have proposals for £606,000 worth of savings? No, of course you don't. The reality is delaying it for a week would not have resulted in a single additional saving being identified. There's obviously a major piece of work to be done by the Education Committee to identify savings. Presumably, if the savings are unpalatable, they'll come back to the Policy and Resources Committee. But instead of suddenly saying, delay it by a week, you would have found a magic wand to wave to make savings. It's complete and utter nonsense. We do have to nail this myth once and for all.
Okay, Ira.
Chair, if we return to the paper in front of us today, I was wondering whether, when you do write, you do put our concerns as strongly as you can with regard to things, and as such, I would move 2.1 and note 2.2.
Gail?
Just very briefly, Councillor Smith just raised a fairly valid point. Do we have capacity in the Education Department at the moment, when they're undertaking 3 reviews, to have to go and do another huge piece of work to look for further savings for us? Or are we really beginning to stretch our Education Department to a point of unfairness?
I'm hearing that we do. Yep. Okay, right. The recommendations, can we agree 2.1? Note 2.2. Thank you. Okay, if we move on to item 4, which is investment in South West HUBCO project. This is a report by the Head of Finance. Members may recall at the Policy Resources Committee on the 21st of June 2011, it was agreed that the Council participate in the South West Territory Hub. Therefore, this report outlines the opportunity for the Council to invest in the South West HUBCO project that will deliver the Dumbeattie Learning Campus. In overall terms, it has been considered that the Dumbeattie Learning Campus provides a suitable investment opportunity for the Council. I appreciate the technical detail contained within the report, and I would ask Paul to present the report or if there's any additional information he thinks necessary.
No, thanks, Leader. You say that this report reflects an investment opportunity arising from the upcoming South West Territory Hub projects, and particularly the schools projects within Dumfries and Galloway. What we're looking at here is the opportunity to provide a share of subordinated debt, which would equate to up to 3% of the total project cost. Now, based on the Dumbeattie project cost of an estimated £24 million, that would equate to a maximum investment of £720,000, which in the scheme of the Council's overall debt management arrangements and temporary investments is a relatively small figure. The interest rate on that investment is attractive. It would be 10.5% per annum. Now, to some extent, that interest rate reflects risk. However, what I would say is that the main issue of risk for the HUBCO that we're investing in would be liquidity and its cash flow. And the important point for us is that the cash flow would be provided by the Council itself through the unitary charge, so that to a large extent addresses that risk. The other thing is that we've undertaken detailed due diligence work on this proposal. We've liaised with other authorities who are doing similar things. We've also liaised with external advisors, financial and legal. We've identified a number of mitigation measures, so we feel that on balance this is a very sound investment for the Council. So the proposal is to approve that today at this small level. The other opportunity that will come in the future will be through the Dumfries Learning Town as well, and we'll come back to members before that with some monitoring information on the progress of this particular investment. Okay, thank you.
Members? Peter?
Thank you, Chair. Looking at an interest rate of 10.5%, you often think that maybe things are too good to be true, and sometimes they often are when you delve into it. But so I've tried to have a good look at the money go round on this. I think the question I'd like to pose is, when do we get, assuming that we invest 720,000, which is the maximum, I think I'm right in saying, when do we get the 720,000 back?
The repayment of principal would be at the end of the 25-year period. So we'd receive interest payments in the meantime, but the actual return of principal would be at the end of the period.
And that would be at par, would it, at 720? That would be a repayment at par?
Yes, the principal would pay the amount we actually put in the first instance, yes.
Tom?
I just wanted to ask, are we going to do that in terms of a revenue investment, or are you going to borrow from Public Works Loan Board at 3% and invest to get 10.5% back? What's the intention?
We're not actually allowed to borrow to invest, so as reflected in the report, we'd actually take this investment out of council reserves. Okay.
Ivor?
Chair, is that the 6 point whatever we usually have for council reserves, or is that an additional sum? Because is it 2% we're meant to maintain? The other thing is, I take it that although we're putting that money in as an investment and getting 10.5% back, we'll be paying that 10.5% anyway, so we're not getting any money on it anyway, because we have to pay the facility management costs to whoever provides it. So we're actually investing 720,000 to get nothing back over 25 years.
On the first point, it wouldn't be from unallocated general fund balances. What we intend doing is creating a negative service reserve, because we've got significant service reserves, so I could put that in there. On the second point, we will be paying the unitary charge regardless. I think there's a need to kind of separate the investment opportunity from the fact that the council will be paying for Dumbeattie Learning Campus through the unitary charge. We'll be paying that cost regardless of whether we're one of the investors. The issue here today really is, do we think that investing £720,000 with an interest rate of 10.5% is a good investment based on what's outlined in the report? So it's separate from the fact that we have to pay for that anyway.
Okay, we've got Ian first.
Thanks. I did find this confusing. I had to go through it quite a few times, took quite a lot of time just to try and understand it. And it kind of came back to the point Ivor just made there in my mind was we're kind of exposing ourselves to £720,000, getting a 10.5% return, but that's money what we're really paying back ourselves anyways, and that's the confusing point for me. But ultimately, the question that then ended up, I thought, how can I pin this down? What if we don't do this? If we don't agree this, what happens? What would be the fallback position?
Somebody else would take up the debt. I mean, it is an attractive investment opportunity. We're being offered this investment opportunity. If we don't take it up, then the other investors would take up that balance.
Can I just come back with one more point then, just in regards to, because it's subordinate debt, I take it, and it's the higher level of risk. And just, if you could explain to me, Paul, a wee bit more about that in regards to why we're exposing ourselves to that level of risk, and what is the real risk that's attached to that?
Yeah, 90% of the funding for the project will come from senior debt. That's been provided by the private sector provider. It's at a much lower rate of interest at 5.5%. What we're being offered is the opportunity to invest in the subordinated debt. Now that ranks below senior debt in the event of a payout where funds are limited. However, it is reflected in the paper. We've had a look at a range of mitigating factors against the risks. We don't feel, and we certainly would be putting this in front of members if we didn't feel that this was a sound investment. So although it's subordinated debt, we feel as though there's sufficient mitigation measures to address the risks. We think it's a sound investment for the council.
Okay. Jane?
I rather agree, and I think sort of as the questions go on, no doubt, I'm about to ask a particularly silly question, but in 310, is it 310? Yes, 310, it made it clear, based on indications to date, only the procuring body invests in its own projects. It's anticipated, therefore, that only Dumfries and Galloway Council would consider investing in the Dalbeattie Learning Campus project. I mean, what you're telling us in answer to Ian's question was that this is an attractive prospect and somebody else would pick it up. And I did actually try asking my husband this, and I couldn't understand what his answer was. So maybe you could explain to me, why would we not actually do some due diligence on East Ayrshire and South Ayrshire and pick up their opportunity, if it's such a good deal?
No, that's a fair point, but it's almost been an unwritten rule between the public sector bodies that rather than have a dozen small investments in a range of projects, that will concentrate on our own projects. So, you still have the same amount available to public sector providers across Scotland, but rather than having Dumfries has the appropriate percentage of its project and other councils do the same, you'd actually have a much smaller proportion in a range of projects, which would be much less tidy and much more difficult to administer. So it's almost like an unwritten rule between us that we'll invest specifically in our own projects.
Jim first and then I.
Thanks, Leader. Paul, could you clarify who retains health and safety responsibility in a sub-HUBCO arrangement?
I have to admit, I'd have to come back to you with that answer. I think it's a separate issue from the investment opportunity we're looking at here, but happy to liaise with the Schools for the Future team and come back with that information.
Okay, Ivor.
Unwritten rules aren't rules. Which one's sort of coming up first? Because I wouldn't like to think that East Ayrshire get the benefit, Ayr gets the benefit, and then we come in third and they can, we'll just invest in that. How do we make sure that the unwritten rules are actually rules rather than...
I can't give a guarantee in respect to that, but I would be extremely surprised if any of those authorities do look to invest out with their own projects. What we're being asked to do is give an indication at this stage of intention to invest, and I'm asking through this project for approval to invest up to the full £720,000 in Dalbeattie. The detail of the actual investments will be determined as we approach financial close, so I'll be able to provide further information on that, but I don't think there's any real risk of other authorities taking up debt out with their own projects at this stage.
So we're not going to be gazumped.
I think perhaps it's helpful for members to remember that we part own HUBCO anyway. So therefore, you know, if such a bidding war came to be, that we would actually outvote them on the board. So therefore, there are protections in there if it came to that. So we're actually investing in the finance model of a company that we actually part own. So therefore, that's what mitigates the risk. The other thing is, you would have to say that if we did start investing in East Ayrshire, you'd have to say, well, how long will East Ayrshire exist? You know, could you always guarantee them to pay their debts? Questions like that would start to come into the risk. That's why we start to concentrate on our own projects, because we know we're always going to pay our bills. Just mitigates, in simple terms, it helps mitigate the risk.
Okay, Peter.
Just following on what Gavin was saying, what will the legal format of this sub-HUBCO be, for starters?
The sub-HUBCO will be a limited liability company. It will be owned by the South West Hub. Okay. It's a special purpose vehicle set up specifically to deliver the specific individual project.
So am I right in thinking that the whole company is financed by debt, in that that's what we've been given so far, so that our interest of 10.5% will be actually financed by debt that sub-HUBCO have borrowed?
The repayment of our interest, the income for that will actually come from the unitary charge received on the project. We won't receive interest until the construction period is finished and the school is actually operational and starting to receive the unitary charge.
So just to clarify, but the 10.5% interest that we get, the unitary charge, that will be financed by debt?
No, the special purpose vehicle will receive the unitary charge once the school's operational, and it's that income flow that will allow the SPV to pay the interest.
So I don't understand where the income is coming from.
Basically, the council will pay for Dalbeattie School. The council will pay a unitary charge, similar to the PPP projects at the minute, where we pay annually for the schools that were created through the PPP project. We will pay the special purpose vehicle for the use of Dalbeattie School, and that will be the income stream that pays for the interest.
Okay, can we go to the recommendations? Can we note 2.1? Can we agree 2.2?
Please, I want to just make a comment in regards to that, or a question.
Yep.
See, when we're agreeing that particular recommendation, is this for the, as per 2.3 for a one-off project, or are we putting that into standing order so therefore it can come forward any time? And is that a delegated thing? We think something we delegate to officers? Was that something, and because of the size and scale of a project like this, would always come back to committee?
Okay.
What we'll do is we'll reflect this agreement within the updated Treasury Management Strategy, which will come to full council at the end of March. But what we're asking for specifically is approval to invest in Dalbeattie Learning Campus project at this stage. We will come back to members for further consideration before the Dalbeattie Learning Town projects come on stream. So it'll be specific to this at this stage.
Okay, agree 2.2 and 2.3. Okay, move on to item 5, which this report provides a summary of forecast expenditure against the budgets available for each of the council services in the current year, and also provides a forecast of year-end general fund balances and funding available to support investment and required savings through the change fund. Paragraphs 3.2 and 3.3 of the report indicate the potential overspending in social work and community customer services. I note that the tight spending control measures in place so as to ensure the avoidance of overspending. Paragraph 3.11 of the report confirms that we have £2.152 million available to the change fund, and the opportunities to add to the resources available will continue to be sought through the remainder of the financial year. Appendix 2 provides a summary of current progress towards the delivery of the 2014 agreed savings. It's anticipated the significant majority of these savings will be delivered this financial year. And Appendix 3 provides an update on the progress of the funding set aside for policy development. These projects funded through policy development are key to changing our council and include initiatives to sustain care at home, maximise employability and redress the adverse impact of welfare reform. I would ask Paul Garrett to present the report.
Just happy to answer any questions. Thanks, Leader.
Members?
Just a small one, Leader, in regard to paragraph 3.6. It's saying that there's an anticipated increase in level of interest, where I thought that there was an underlying feeling that it would be either levelled or even to stop deflation, there would be a decrease in interest. So just to get an understanding of what that point's meaning.
What we're basically saying at paragraph 3.6 is that the indications of a delay in the increase that had been anticipated earlier in the year, that interest rates would be starting to sneak up by now, but it's now apparent through recent economic indicators that it's likely to be a significant further delay for interest rates rise. It's really what that was reflecting there is that benefit the council's receiving from that delay before the increase.
Okay, can we note 2.1 and 2.2? Yeah. Move on to item 6, which is capital investment strategy monitoring. 2014-15 for the period ending 31st of December. This report provides members with an overview of the financial and physical progress of the agreed capital investment strategy for the current financial year. Appendix 1 provides members with an analysis of spend to date and projected outturn for the current year on each of the individual agreed corporate priority projects and asset class allocations. The overall position reflected in Appendix 1 is that 99.5% of the revised allocation of $36,079,000 will be utilised. I must put on record the importance of this achievement, as this expenditure makes a significant contribution to achieving our Council's priority of building the local economy. The report also provides members with an annual monitoring update on criteria under which capital projects should be referred to Committee for Scrutiny of Slippage, which is also incorporated with Appendix 7 of this report. I'll ask Paul if there's anything further to add. I'm happy to answer questions. Members? Ian?
Thanks, Leader. I suppose I was looking through this, it's all to note, so it's pretty much a note in process, but what I did pick up on certainly on the back of there was a public meeting last week in regards to the White Sands, and just taking that one project alone into consideration. It's only talking about small figures here, but what was put forward as indicative costs for a passive flood defence system that could be put into place was in the region of just short of £9 million, I think it was. And we're looking at a project in regards to the White Sands just short of £15 million is what's being proposed from the council. Well, I was thinking wider the field. Ken, I mean, in real terms, if we can see a real benefit in savings in some of the region of £8 million from the council, then that further investment would be looked to invest in future years. Rather than putting it at White Sands, we get two birds with one stone, likes of the Star of Caledonia or projects like that across the region. So, I mean, it's indicated in there, it's only talking about the investigative works and the preparatory works more than anything, but I think we should be looking at this seriously. If we can deliver the same level of flood defence on the White Sands for half the price, we should be taking that in consideration. We should be bringing a report back, whether it's back to here or whether it's back to economy, environment, infrastructure, to look at that and consider the potential further investment of the savings that could be generated there.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm aware, that there's public consultation still ongoing. There's consultation with the public, and that will go to the EEI committee. Paul? Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Good. The public engagement session is just kind of being wrapped up and reported on. And the idea is that we'll go back to this committee and we'll report on the public engagement and the feedback from that. On the back of that, we will go to the service committee, to the EEI committee, with the outputs and the kind of feedback from this committee. On the costs that were being kind of thrown around in terms of the scheme costs, I'm pretty sure that there wasn't an equivalent scheme that was being proposed with what was advertised or what was put out by the Save Our White Sands scheme party, and the figures that were in the paper were for a much simpler scheme that would probably deal with allegedly the flooding problem, but didn't look at the whole of the White Sands and provide the kind of public realm project and streetscape works and landscaping that the Fuller project contains. So it wasn't an equivalent comparison, and it's certainly something that it could be made a more economic scheme, or there could be cost savings, but there would be the downside of that would be that we could end up with something that is just effectively a wall at a reduced cost.
Colin?
Just an observation rather than a question, and it's that we've obviously had debates in the past at this committee about the level of slippage within the capital investment strategy over the years, and concerns members have had. This is the second report running now that the level of slippage is almost negligible, I have to say, and I think that it shows you that the long way we've came in terms of actually tackling that particular problem, and it's a real positive development.
Absolutely. Can we move to the recommendations? Can we note 2.1, 2, 3, 4 and 5? Sorry? Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. It's just a couple of things on the Dumfries Learning Town. Not surprising that the costs have went up for the North West Cluster and the St Joseph's. However, I've tried and failed. It may be somewhere, but I can't seem to find it. Is what's the design capacity of the 3 new schools and the refurbished schools going to be? I realise that the 2 officers sitting there will not be able to actually answer that one. However, if I could find that one out, and it's regarding the criteria for referral. On page 48, it says 0 waste Stranraer, delay in weeks, 0. Yeah, that was the delay in weeks for getting it built. However, the park still isn't actually open. So perhaps we maybe actually need another column in there that says when does the project actually start to function the way it was designed and built.
Yep.
Not sure the detail on that particular project, but happy to look into that and report back.
Thanks, Chair. On that second point, the criteria that was agreed relates to the actual construction period rather than any period that might be required for establishing the premises and getting it operated.
Thank you. I think that was actually said in the report. That's what I was looking at, trying to find out. Any other member? Is this an additional question or is it the same?
Yeah, it's just, I realised that it was the build. However, the people in Stranraer still haven't got their 0 waste park actually working and fully open.
Oh, maybe another committee can take that up. Okay. Right. Okay. Can we note the 5 recommendations? Okay. Move on to item 7, which is the report provides members with an overview of financial performance against budget for Chief Executive Service for 2014-15 based on the monitoring information for the period 31st of December 2014. I welcome the indication in the report that the service will achieve an overall projected outturn of break-even. Are you happy to answer any questions, Paul? Members? Ivor?
Have we any idea what the measures to be identified are yet?
Is this the 18,000, is it? Yep.
Largely opportunistic savings that we'll identify through temporary vacancies, things like that. At that level, we're confident that they can be identified between now and the end of the financial year. It'll not be anything that will impact directly on service delivery.
That sounds a bit like the answer I would give to my husband when he asked me what I've done with the housekeeping.
You get too much money if you get £18,000 a week. Can we note 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4? Right, if we move on to item 8, which is the workforce transition, DG Transform. This report asks members to consider a transform programme which will extend the options available to employees and improve the longer term deployment and retraining of our workforce. I recognise the importance of our council managing its workforce more efficiently and deploying our resources flexibly. I also understand the proposals contained within this report have been very much welcomed by the joint trade unions. I'll ask Paul Clarkin if he's anything to add to the report, if he's happy to answer questions.
Leader, I'd just like to outline some of the highlights of the report, if I may. DG Transform is about extending the range of options, as you've said, available to employees affected by change. It's also about how we retrain and use our employees' existing skills as we manage the change process. Our existing suite of transition policies have served us well, but we now need to look more closely at the work that goes into the planning of our future workforce. We will be refreshing our workforce strategy and how this links to workforce and succession planning. And as part of this, we need to invest in our workforce. The focus will be on assessment of competencies that our employees can do, emphasising their strengths, building their confidence and identifying appropriate options for them. The DG Transform programme will require the resources identified in Table 3 on page 61, and the work will be carried out in 2 phases. Firstly, to extend the use of the 16PF personality questionnaire, which we currently use widely on senior appointments. This also is a career development report to help our employees to plan their next steps. Then we'll introduce a more detailed assessment processes, including the establishment of an internal jobs market with an emphasis on developing skills and career opportunities. I've set out some of the elements of the programme at paragraph 336 on page 62 and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. This is developing on ERVS and the Switch programme that we've already in place, and it's to develop how people within Switch. My understanding is that we're instead of matching process as such, they can develop skills to enhance them into other jobs, and all this is a package within that. Am I correct?
Yes, indeed, Leader. The Switch is actually what we're calling DG Transform, so it's one and the same thing. And it's actually just extending those range of options to save employees having to remain for long periods on redeployment pools.
Okay, members. Okay, Ronnie.
Thanks, Leader. It's just with my union hat on. It's on page 62 that you mentioned, Paul, and it's the workforce responsibilities. I mean, obviously this leads to flexibility and what we used to call multi-skilling, but it's the second wee bullet point thing, except offers of alternative employment. That's a bit of a general statement. I mean, round pegs and square holes or whatever. Obviously there's safeguards there, and I know the union's on board, but it's just, when you read it cold like that, it does seem a bit, fatalistic, if you like.
Perhaps you'd be more comfortable if I put the word reasonable in there, and that would certainly be our intention, because part of the programme is to identify a wide variety of options available to people and to extend those. But clearly employees can't refuse reasonable alternatives if in some areas those are quite limited. And I think that's what that's meant to describe.
Okay, can we go to recommendations with that one change? Can we agree 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and note 2.4? Okay, if we move on to item 9, which is consideration of grant awards from the Council's Major Events Strategic Fund. This report contains recommendations for the approval of grant awards to major festivals and events projects. These recommendations have been made to us by the Dumfries and Galloway Events Partnership. The partnership provides an expert independent review of these applications. As well as delivering successful events, these activities will also provide significant economic and tourism benefits for the local economy. As members can see, the events are wide and varied, ranging from ceilidhs in the west to pipe bands in the east. I also welcome the arrangements being put in place for Dumfries and Galloway to host a stage of the 2016 Tour of Britain. The Tour of Britain brings a world-class sporting event to our region. I also note that the report also presents a summary of the key findings from the Council-funded study into motorsports in Dumfries and Galloway. Richard, have you anything to add to the report, or are you happy to answer questions?
Just one comment, if I might, Leader, and that's just to draw members' attention to 3.9, which is our intention to work with Leader in order to endeavour to draw down additional funds to the region that will help to enhance further our major festivals and events strategy based on the significant evidence that we've gathered over the past 12 to 24 months. So both Ian Barr and myself happy to answer questions, Leader.
Members? Gail?
Just very briefly, we don't really have a criteria here for why certain events were chosen and why they weren't, which I think is utterly unacceptable. There's some on that list that I don't entirely agree should be getting the funding they're getting. Eden Festival, for instance, is in my patch. It's known as a drug-fueled festival. The police had a hell of a job at it last year, and I'm not entirely sure we should be promoting events like that through the council, where there's been high levels of police intervention without any evidence to show us why it's there.
Richard, Ian.
Thank you. The feedback received from licensing was that the Eden Festival worked very well last year, and they have an exemplary set of objectives and have become a community interest company. A condition of grant is that they continue to promote the festival as a family-friendly festival, and we've received the first set of proposals to that aim.
I would just say on that, as a local member, I can assure you I would not be taking my family to it.
Jane?
Gosh, after that vote of confidence. Right, well, I want to say I think Dumfries and Galloway actually is very good at this sort of thing, and I think we ought to continue to be very good at it. Leader, I wrote to you a week ago congratulating you on the, I think, the breadth of opportunities we've got here, and I think it's extremely good. My question specifically is on 3.77, which is that we are told that the Tour of Britain provides a superb return on investment. Well, I don't know what that return is, so I'm being told that. And I do accept that there are other places where we're told that I think the rallies produce about 600,000, 700,000 pounds worth of return. I think it would be useful to have maybe a little bit more information. And of course, you won't be surprised to hear me asking about the future proposals for the gallery project that is going to be coming forward. That's going to change the £600,000, which we know from having had a pilot running since 2000, produces hundreds of thousands of pounds on the basis of a summer activity. And this is to be a year-round activity. And I would like to integrate it into whatever else is happening in the council, because this is a council project, if you see what I mean. It's not simply coming from other ways. It's a council project, but could capitalise on other opportunities. So through you, if I could possibly please ask, what are the proposals to make certain that we fund these opportunities properly?
The council is in receipt, Councillor, of the latest economic impact study relating to the Tour of Britain in Dumfries and Galloway 2013, and it provided strong evidence of a good return on investment for the council. There's two key impacts that as a region we benefit from. The direct financial benefit in 2013 was in the region of £300,000 to £400,000, and I'll make that a report available to all members of this committee. But more substantially even than that is that there is a formula for calculating the PR value of the Tour of Britain. And because we had one of the most high-profile stages, the broadcast media, the Tour of Britain was broadcast to over 120 countries in 2013. and the PR value from broadsheets and coverage across all media in Great Britain was truly substantial and could be calculated at between £800,000 and £1 million, if that serves me correct. The Tour of Britain is curated, almost the contracts are curated by Event Scotland, and that helps us get a fantastic deal. We actually pay £25,000 for the contract and about £15,000 on the ground costs. So you can see that with an economic impact of more than £1 million, if you aggregate the financial benefits and the PR benefits, you're talking about in the region of more than a ratio of £20 for every pound spent. In terms of the gallery project, I think it's essential that we integrate the exhibitions with the wider events programme in the region, and I think that will help us prolong the visitor stays within Dumfries and Galloway when that comes on stream. And I think that's an opportunity for the event strategy and its partners going forward.
Jane?
May I come back? But we've got to actually get it into the programme. I'm looking at the remaining balance for 16-17, and the suggestion is that it will be opening, I think, in 16-17. So I'm really looking, Leader, for some concrete suggestion of what we might do, even if it's only to say in the recommendations that will come forward at a future time for us to get some level of specific amount of money put towards developing a programme. Dundee City has just not blinked, putting 80 million into the V&A in Dundee City, and it was 40, they expected exactly. And we, for our very modest outlay, I think could actually capitalise colossally on this. So let's not lose out on the opportunity. It's been actually, I think what we're getting for the amount of council input is superb. So let's not lose out on putting some money into developing it and really making a splash at the time.
I think we can get a future report on that. Yeah, thanks. Do it, Gail.
I didn't come back in after my little rant. You didn't answer my question about the criteria. Area committee, we have a sheet of paper which tells us, you know, what boxes an event is ticked and why it's getting the funding and why it's met that criteria. We've got none of that in front of us. I got an email from one of the applicants outlining their business case, but I don't see how that's stacked up against council priorities and our decision to fund these. And it's that level of information I think members should absolutely have.
How's it worked out?
Leader, yeah, I'm happy to confirm that the evaluation that's undertaken on behalf of the council and presented to you for your approval by the Events Partnership, based on the criteria that was approved by members last year, happy to recirculate that. I think there is a summary in the papers, but happy to circulate that to members. Just if I may, Chair, come back on the other matter raised by Councillor Maitland. We're hoping to bring a report back to this committee on the 21st of April in regard to the gallery project. So we'll make sure the Councillor Maitland's comments are included in that report.
Got Ian first.
Thank you, Leader. Just excellent report. Ken, I don't think these kind of reports get enough recognition, but because of the economic benefit that it does bring to the region. I had two questions. One was on the Tour of Britain, and I think it's been answered. I thought it was coming this year, but I think it's next year it's coming. It's saying I thought it was coming this year as well, but I don't see that within the report. Maybe it is. Another thing was on the criteria, and it was in particular in relation to the pipe band competition in Annan. I know they applied for quite a considerable amount more, but if we get that information back from Richard in regards to how that was scored, that was certainly one of the questions I had, because I know the benefits that pipe band championship does have and how it's looking to grow on the back of the previous British pipe band championship was there and try and establish. It's looking for other funders out with the council as well, obviously, but just so if we get that answer in regards to Tour of Britain, absolutely happy to support the recommendations within the report, but the Tour of Britain, is it this year as well, but I think it's indicated maybe next year.
Yes, the Tour of Britain is actually coming through Dumfries and Galloway councillor, but because there's no funding issues for this council, it's and I can't announce the route, but there's a route from the northwest of England to the Scottish borders, so it will come through our area, but there's no funding issues to present to members. I think we can still capitalise on it this year, but I think the bulk of our efforts will be to host a high-profile stage next year. And I think that we said we'll circulate the criteria for the awards and the judgments for the awards, and hopefully that respond to that part of your query. Thanks for your support.
Ronnie?
Thanks. And I'll avoid the temptation of being parochial, however. It's just nice to see that there's a few Annandale and Eskdale events on this strategy, which is really welcome for the whole of Annandale and Eskdale. So that's all I wanted to say. No. Drink fuel, maybe, but no drunk.
Okay, Ivor.
Chair, it's with regard to 3.8, we have the sector development. Just from 381 to 383, we have I think it's the Wicker Man, which was one of our beacon events, and we're looking to see if the festival grows, should we be investing in it? Maybe a bit of clarity on what is meant by that and what we're actually looking to get out of that actual study. And the other thing was, as it was a former beacon event, we have also the Big Burn Supper, which is a beacon event, and I was at a couple of events this year, and my surprise after the last one I'd been to, I really enjoyed them. I'll not say which ones in case I get in trouble, but my wife was with me that one. And if we are going to look to actually expand that, will that go through a similar sector development process in the future to see if we can help them, or if they need to withdraw from that because they're self-funding?
Thanks, Leader. I'll maybe kick off and then pass on to Ian for some details, particularly in relation to Big Burn Supper. In terms of the Wicker Man event, that's obviously a very well-established event of significant importance to our region. We did fund that event last year, but we were very clear that was a one-off grant in relation to Homecoming 2014, and that the event has the quality of management, the financial and intellectual assets to flourish and develop without the need for our significant investment moving forward in terms of pure hard cash. However, what we have been doing is working with the Wicker Man Committee to see how we can further develop and enhance that event, and it's for those purposes that we're looking to take forward the study, and they seem to be very supportive of our approach in that regard. Ian, you want to pick up any of the specific detail on that?
Well, we have designed the study with full agreement of the Wicker Man Festival, and it's to look at if it does grow, as they envisage a new wave of growth, what is the basis for future partnership between not just the council but the wider public sector and the Wicker Man, and what pressures does that put on the infrastructure of the stewardry that we as a council would want to have really good forward planning on, so that we can welcome these visitors. So that's the basis of the Wicker Man study, as well as to report fully on its economic impacts. In terms of the Big Burn Supper, the results that the Big Burn Supper recently announced, I think does fully justify its status as the region's sole beacon event, and they doubled their ticket sales, which gives them a strong platform for growth in future years. Members have consistently invested in events on the basis that if we get the targeted investment right to the festivals at the right time, we'll grow our existing portfolio. And that's what we've done. We've managed to reach a stage now where we've got between 15 and 20 nationally and internationally significant events in Dumfries and Galloway. Big Burn Supper, if it continues to grow, we would recommend a tapering off of council investment after its beacon event status finishes, but find out where there's still added value in working with the festival.
I've lost my list. Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Just to go back to what Councillor McGregor was saying, it's nice to see that the council are actually investing in events throughout the region, although unlike Councillor Wolverby, there's no some money across the Quintinshill, but I'll lay that one aside at the minute. But as Councillor McGregor says, we are being asked to hand out a fair bit of money here for all different events. And apart from the Tour of Britain, the World Ice Hockey Championship and the American Galloway Hill Rally, which we get a small explanation of what the money's for, all the other events, we are just being asked to hand out the grant money. I would have preferred to know what we were actually going to be getting for the money. On every one of them, there will be agreements between the council and the event about what the money is for, etc., etc. And I would have liked to have known that before I actually made the decision on whether to go ahead with the grant recommended or not.
Yeah.
Thanks, Leader. Just to confirm, Councillor McClung, yes, there absolutely is very detailed service level agreements on every specific event that's awarded. That was part of the criteria that was agreed by members when we established the major festival event strategy. So that review is built in to the award, and Ian and other colleagues work very hard to make sure that each of those service level agreements criteria are assessed post the event to make sure they've delivered on the award in terms of the criteria that's established.
Okay, Jim, I'll let you back in for one more.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I'm quite well aware that they'll have service level agreements, but there's nothing in the papers that actually explains what, for interest's sake, we are going to get for the £6,000 in the pipe band competition in Annan, or the £8,000 for Eden Fields, £10,000 for the electric fields. I would have liked to know exactly what we were going to get for the money. Now, it's all very well saying we'll get criteria, but there'll be some of the criteria that we agreed will not be actually relate to each individual event. I would like to have known what we were getting for the money for every one of the ones that's there.
Thank you. Within the appendices, there may not be specific conditions of grant, but we have reported fully on what we expect the return on public investment to be, and that is something that we will do. There was an appendix prepared by officers to go with the report.
Thank you, Leader. Clearly, there's information that members are looking for. Doesn't in any way detract from taking a decision today, and therefore the assurance is that if that level of detail is required by members, that can be made available. But the assurances that are required today can be given from officers as appropriate. The point's well made. Thank you, Leader.
Okay, Colin.
Thanks, Leader. Obviously, the report's the same format as previous year's reports, I have to say, so I'm a bit surprised at the questions around the format, but I don't think we should underestimate the tremendous success the major events and festival strategies actually had in this region, both I think in terms of the impact on the economy, but also in terms of raising the profile of a region for what is, I have to say, a very, very modest council investment. This council has gained, I think, a very positive reputation for the contribution we make to organising and supporting these particular events. But I think more importantly, this region's actually gained an excellent reputation for the range of events and festivals that we actually have. And I think, frankly, that's something we should be proud of. And it's obviously, we're very good at, I think, focusing on the negative. But I think that if you look at the range of events that we've actually got before us today, which are recommended, I have to say, by an independent panel, it's a fantastic range of events, and I think it continues to build the reputation this council and this region has for being, I think, the best place in rural Scotland for hosting major events.
Okay, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say thank you to officers for including the sheepdog trials. I think that'll be a hugely beneficial event for the area, and I'll definitely be taking my family to it.
Thank you. Can we go to the recommendations? Sorry, Jim first, and then Gail.
Thanks, Leader. There are two titles in the table on page 69 which intrigue me. Electric Fields and the Trophy de Cos. Could I get a very brief explanation of what these events actually are?
Ian.
Thank you. Yes, Electric Fields has rebranded. It was formerly Cumlong and Rocks. It took place for 2 or 3 years at Cumlong and Castle between Dumfries and Annan. and was actually a showcase for Dumfries and Galloway bands, but they've moved to Drumlanrig Castle. They've got a much more ambitious programme in place. They had a really successful first year, and I think we'll see strong growth in that festival. Trophy de Cost is actually something that's gone under the radar, but is an international quality ice dance competition and synchronised skating competition. I think it's one of the real opportunities for growth that we'll see in the next 2 or 3 years, and I'm delighted that the Events Partnership have recommended a grant of support. I think the Council can really get behind this event and demonstrate growth and help it grow.
Gail?
Thank you, Chair. I think Jim's actually just confirmed our point. We don't know what half these festivals are. The other question is at 3.7.3, which one, how many actually applied in the first place and who were unsuccessful? We don't have any of the details of those that didn't actually make the cut. And again, yeah, I think we need to see this from a scrutiny perspective. There may be things that are slipping through the net because of our criteria, and as things shift, we maybe need to keep an eye on the criteria as well. But if we don't have the detail of who hasn't been successful, why they haven't been successful, who has been successful, why they are successful, then from a scrutiny perspective, we're not really doing our job properly, in my opinion. But as I say, I do appreciate the huge amount of work that goes into it. The last thing was the Wickerman Festival. How are you going to conduct the survey? Are you going to go round the field, speaking to people, 3 sheets to the wind and getting some feedback, or is it a wider community survey?
Richard?
Leader, I'll maybe pick up the first question and then ask Ian to pick up on the Wicker Man. Certainly in terms of establishing the events partnership, when members approved the festival and event strategy, that independent and expert element of scrutiny that was brought to the table was something that members were very keen to allow to flourish and deliver, and then the recommendations brought back to committee. I'm happy, as per last year, Chair, that we can circulate the detail of the unsuccessful events to members. Happy to do that. I think we did that off the back of last year's committee report as well. But the report in front of members today basically reflects the report that they and the criteria that was agreed last year. Wickerman, Ian?
The Wickerman study will be posted on Public Contract Scotland, and 4 renowned consultants who are fit for purpose will be able to commission or to tender for that work. There's a tightly drawn study that I think will provide value for money.
Okay, can we go to the recommendations? Give me note 2.1, approve 2.2, agree 2.3, note 2.4, and note 2.5. Okay. Okay, if we move on to item 10, which is the Convention of Scottish Local Authorities, this report by the Assistant Chief Executive. The purpose of the report is to consider this Council's continued membership of the Convention of Scottish Local Authorities. This report also seeks member agreement to the level of member attendance at the COSLA Improvement Service 2015 conference. There are 3 key factors in the report about COSLA membership. Firstly, that the changed relationship between the Convention and Leaders Forum has not been fully embedded. However, we can see from the COSLA strategic plan and the changes to the Constitution that a new arrangement focuses on the 2 issues that are of paramount importance to us, the economy and tackling inequality. Secondly, we've secured a welcome commitment to COSLA supporting rural councils. I'll give you a bit more detail on that after, to strengthen their voice. However, there is no specific proposals as yet about how that can be done. Thirdly, we have no details about the new body being set up by the 4 councils that are leaving COSLA in April this year, or if the Cabinet Secretary will recognise this association of councils as part of the negotiations around the financial settlement, indeed if he recognises COSLA at all. The position of COSLA in relation to the teacher numbers also highlights that its position as the sole negotiation route for the Scottish Government with councils is no longer guaranteed. There are therefore 3 choices for the committee to consider We can put into effect the notice to leave COSLA in April this year with an early report to come forward about alternative arrangements. We can agree to stay in COSLA for 2015-16, but give notice of intention to withdraw in 2016-17 with a report to come forward in autumn about how the new constitution is working out, the effectiveness of the support for rural authorities COSLA puts in place, the arrangements for the new association led by Glasgow, Aberdeen, South Lanarkshire, South Aberdeen, South Lanarkshire and Renfrewshire, and COSLA's place in negotiations with the Scottish Government. Can agree to remain in COSLA with no conditions for next year, which would mean membership until 2017-18. I'll ask Liz if she's got anything to add to the report. One of the things that I have been talking to the President, and I've been talking to other officers within COSLA regarding our position in COSLA and how we can develop our voice in COSLA if we decide as a council to stay in COSLA. On that basis, I met a few times with, with different people within COSLA, and I wrote the last letter I wrote after a meeting, and I put what I thought what was came out of that meeting. I've had no response back as yet, but from that, but the previous one agreed with what I was saying. Now, nothing's in concrete here, and there's been no agreements. So I've been trying to enhance our voice within COSLA. One of the issues that we did try and respond to was a strong rural voice and rural forum and economy. And central to our I won't read it out, but what I sent them. Central to our discussion was acknowledgement that COSLA aims to provide a single voice for Scottish local government. And I expressed a wish to ensure that the voice of Dumfries and Galloway as a region is heard and fully represented at COSLA. In particular, we recognised that rural authorities may require different solutions to address different economic and deprivation issues. I know is it placed through, for example, the city regions. We need something different. The impact of public sector reform and reducing resources means that more than ever sustaining public services in a rural region in the longer term is critical to tackling unemployment, low pay, poverty and inequality. And I welcome, this is me writing to him, I welcome his response to my concerns and supporting the establishment of a forum for rural authorities to meet and discuss the issues they wish to prioritise and to lobby on, and highlighting that convention will receive a report on the development of a rural forum or similar as part of the changes to COSLA structures. I also wrote saying that I appreciated his support, their support, in ensuring that the views of Dumfries and Galloway Council will contribute to the thinking on this. And I also said that I look forward to working with COSLA officers on this matter and contributing to shaping the important work of the convention. In June, helping us establish that strong rural voice. Now, as I said, none of this I've had any concrete response back from this. But the message I was getting before was positive from them, but it doesn't, what that means, I'll let you decide. A strong rural voice and distribution as well. We've had a sort of reassurance the concerns I raised regarding the distribution and the rural voice being heard and appreciated within that. And I gave an example that, for early learning, but, we had to fight within COSLA and groups, and then through the leaders and others were there. Jane was there at the time as well. And how that can't be a sustainable way to go forward in COSLA. We have to have this recognition within COSLA that our voice counts, and we have to have specifics about rural costs and how that affects the rural authorities factored into any discussions about distribution. Sometimes, they will be weighted in different ways by what type of distribution it is, but that mindset, that process has to be embedded within COSLA, that rural authorities are taken into account within that way. One of the other things that asked for and discussed in the clarity was the business management at COSLA and how the business management at COSLA operates for all members. And in discussions, we acknowledged with them that the need for COSLA to seek clarity from member authorities and activities and focus that all members agree is a priority, and there is a consensus on. In other words, everything we agree on, there's a consensus on, we work towards that. And likewise, what we recognised was the need to establish clarity of areas where there is disagreement, and as such, COSLA is not mandated to act on behalf of member authorities. So what we do agree on, that they're mandated to do that, but we don't, we do it a different way for ourselves. Public sector jobs, we had a discussion on the importance of public sector jobs to Dumfries and Galloway economy, and there was a recognition the potential for bringing higher paid and skilled jobs to the region. And his insight into the current government thinking on this and its links to a wider economic strategy were very helpful. And I appreciate that the support was for COSLA establishing a lobbying position with the Scottish Government to ensure a fair deal for rural economies, including a better distribution for public sector jobs. I gave examples, and you can imagine the examples I gave, but it wasn't just about that. It was about getting a fair crack of the whip for our areas for all public sector jobs. So there's no concrete yeses and nos within that, but that was just a wee bit of background which may, develop into the debate. It may be fed into the debate, and you can make your own minds up about which way you want to go. Liz?
Thank you. I think you've just highlighted the fact that there are still a number of unknowns. There's 3 areas that at this precise moment we don't know how it's going to play out. The relationship between the convention and the leaders' meetings and what the actual COSLA programme of work is, how they're going to deal with rural issues and how they're going to make sure that rural councils' voices are heard within the COSLA structure, and also indeed the new association of the councils which are definitely leaving COSLA. We don't know what that's going to look like, and we don't know if the Scottish Government, particularly in relation to the distribution arrangements, whether or not that new association will play a part in that. So at this precise moment, we don't know particular areas. So that clearly has an impact on what your decision will be about whether or not you come out of COSLA or whether or not we want to stay in perhaps for another year, reserving your position for future years, or just decide that you want to stay in permanently.
Members. Tom?
Yeah, maybe Alice could give me an answer on page 92, item 15.2. We know at the moment if we rejoin and then decide to leave what the cost is, but this changed the constitution. It's a wee bit misleading, and I'm not quite sure actually whether it could be legally binding anyway. But is there a definitive figure on what the cost would be?
No, we don't yet have that figure, or indeed your point about whether or not that is legally enforceable. And certainly Glasgow City Council are taking legal advice about that. So no, we don't have that, I'm afraid.
Jane? Oh.
It was really just to make a point about you produced 3 options. Leader, you suggested 3 ways forward, and the middle one of possibly not leaving, reserving our position. Is that, what status would that have within COSLA? I remain of the opinion that on our own we are very vulnerable. I have to say we're pretty vulnerable, possibly as it is at the moment. I do accept that. And I'm not disagreeing with that, but if in a sort of slightly, shall we say, shaken up and rather shaken COSLA, we might have rather more clout than we have had in the past. I certainly was left with the opinion that when we talked about rural issues in convention, I felt that there was a movement and an understanding and a recognition in convention which had not been there before. And I think we've got an opportunity, possibly now. But I'd just like to understand, in your second option there, what the status really is. Can we go in a kind of yes, but view?
I mean, I think basically what I'm saying here is we're in the same position that we rejoin COSLA and give notice, which leaves our options open, and we get a report back in the autumn regarding the Constitution and how that's working, or whether there's any movement in the rural issues, or whether there's not any movement in the rural issues. But that leaves that, that leaves that notice for the following year. So we rejoin and then we give notice. Am I right? We've got Ian first and then Colin.
Thanks, Leader. Similar view to what Councillor Maitland's coming up with. You've put forward 3 options. I think we're inclined to agree with option 2 as well. I'd just like to hear number 3 again, if that's possible. We do think that there is a return on investment for this for Dumfries and Galloway. We do see more money coming back in regards to being a member of COSLA than being out of it. Representation, obviously we have an issue with that, but I don't think that's for here today. Today is primarily to discuss whether we stay in COSLA or not. I think for the benefits the people in Dumfries and Galloway would receive by remaining a member of COSLA, we would agree with option 2 at this moment in time, but we'd like to hear what just exactly what option 3 was, please.
Option 3 just means that we rejoin COSLA and that's it. We're back in the fold. Yep. Colin?
I suppose the one slight concern with the second option, which is effectively to rejoin or to continue to be a member of COSLA, but then serve notice, is the way in which COSLA appear to be changing the goalposts around elements of funding with regards to leaving COSLA. When a number of local authorities indicated their desire to leave COSLA, instead of actually speaking to those local authorities and discussing with them the concerns, we had the ridiculous scenario where the Chief Executive of COSLA wrote a threatening letter to every council and basically said, if you leave, you're going to have to pay the following bills of COSLA. Now, any legal scrutiny of that by other local authorities, in particular Glasgow, has found that to be completely wanton and actually an empty threat. But the concern is that COSLA will effectively close that loophole, and it would mean that, say, we decided to continue for a year but serve notice. If we did decide in a year's time that they had failed to meet the demands that we had, we would be hit with this bill because effectively COSLA will close the loophole, as I've said, and we will have to pick up a share of the costs. So is there any suggestion that that's what COSLA are currently doing in terms of trying to close that loophole?
I'm not aware of any work that COSLA's currently got ongoing. I think clearly Glasgow City Council's doing some of the work about getting the legal position sorted. I think you're right about when it was a much higher number of councils that were proposing to leave. That would have left COSLA very financially vulnerable. But I don't think COSLA are working towards that at the moment.
Can I maybe just seek a wee bit of clarification just on that point? And there's obviously changes in the Constitution. Has the wording been firmed up regarding that specific that Councillor Smith asked about?
If you look again at page 92, which deals with the resignation of member councils and dissolution, it does set out the fact that it's the share of responsibility. So they did change their constitution to say that. But that's the point that Glasgow are certainly looking into. Paragraph 15.2.
Any other member? Ivor?
Chair, I think it's disappointing that we're actually here with a reduced membership. We've got 4 councils that have left, the old saying, divide and conquer. We don't have a single voice for local government now, which I don't think is a good thing. One could be played off against the other. My own preference would be to stay in just now. I think going alone would be a minnow if we went with the other groups. 4 councils left. We have a sort of parity with most of the other councils in there. There's one or two bigger ones. I think we should stay in just now. Not too happy at the way they've moved the sort of power away from convention. I think convention now has lost a bit of its bite. Seems to be, you run the sort of COSLA and wee bits on the side, and we'll take it to the sort of leadership groups. Not even leaders. I think the leadership groups seem to be more powerful. I think it's taking the power away from the convention. But I sort of favour going in for another year, but reserving our position currently.
Andy?
Thanks, Leader. Ronnie, I think we have to thank you for your input actually at COSLA, because what you're saying actually sounds very positive and constructive. I think your view is option 2 would be the way forward.
Okay, sorry, Ian.
Just a really brief one. It's because Councillor Smith brought this up, and it's have we got a financial figure against paragraph 15.2? We've got no indication of what that may be if it was worst case scenario. I would imagine we'd have to take council advice anyways.
That's right. It also depends how many councils leave COSLA as well, but we can certainly provide you with that information as part of our next report.
Okay, I think we've got some kind of consensus on the option 2, which I put forward, was to agree to stay in COSLA but give notice of intention to withdraw in 2016-17 with a report to come forward in autumn about how the new constitution is working out, the effectiveness of the support that rural authorities COSLA puts in place, and arrangements for the new association led by Glasgow, Aberdeen, South Lanarkshire and Renfrewshire, and COSLA's place in negotiations with the Scottish Government. So we've got the recommendations 2.1, which is note. 2.2, that's we've decided in option 2 that I put forward, and agree the payment in 2.3. The other one we've got to decide is agree the level of member attendance at COSLA Improvement Services Conference, setting the agenda schedule for 12th and 13th of March. Members?
Chair, I would move that one member from each group or grouping, etc., should be allowed to go. I don't think there's a convention at this one, is there? Because was it last year? I think they did away with convention. But
I'm not sure. I think there is a convention for 40 minutes or something like that.
I think it's beneficial to all groups to have the opportunity to go, one member from each group. And I think that's what should be allowed to happen.
So that's six groupings. Okay. Agreed. Right, if we move on to item 11, which is the civic government non-liquor licensing fees, the report asks members to undertake a review of fees for a range of non-liquor licensing activities and sets out recommended increases. At paragraph 3.15 of the report, a comparison of certain liquor, certain liquor, I've got that in my head. Certain licenses, types, fees is provided for members' information. I would ask Sharon Hines to, if there's any additional information. I'm happy to answer questions.
Nothing additional to ask
Okay.
questions.
Members? Agreed. Item 12, which is the World War I commemoration of Quintinshill rail disaster, 22nd of May 2015. Report by Head of Corporate Support. This report is to inform members of the outline arrangements in place for the commemorative day to mark the Quintinshill rail disaster being held in Gretna on 22nd of May 2015, and to give authority to the Chief Executive to finalise arrangements for the event. I acknowledge the work of our Council's Armed Forces champion, Councillor Archie Dryborough, who along with the other elected members, community organisations and national bodies is helping to ensure that fitting and appropriate arrangements are in place to commemorate the centenary of the Quintinshill rail disaster. I'll ask Derek if there's anything further to add, or
Thank you, Leader. Nothing to add.
members. Jane?
Nothing at all to add to the report, except highly to recommend. Our own pet representative is not here, and actually hasn't asked me even to say this, but the Devil's Porridge has got the most fantastic and really excellent explanation about what happened. And I would highly recommend it to members. Really, truly, it's most moving and really gives you a clear background, and I do highly recommend it.
Thank you. I have visited it, and you're correct. Ian?
I would agree with Councillor Maitland's saying there, but in regards to the recommendations, I think it's because of the level of involvement I've actually seen that Archie's put into this. I think we should put it quite clearly within the recommendations. We do thank him for his armed force champion help as well. He's been very non-political in regards to this. He made every effort to make it work, make it happen. So certainly would like to see that incorporated within the recommendations.
Thank you for that. Do that. Okay, so we can agree the recommendation. We move on to item 13, which is the Cannonbie wastewater pumping station. This report considers a request from Scottish Water to facilitate its ownership of land for a wastewater pumping station adjoining Boholm Hall, Cannonbie, and thus enabling future development in the village. Paragraph 3.16 of the report advises members that at its meeting on 21st of January 2015, Annan and SDL Area Committee agreed to recommend to the Policy Resources Committee to support option 3, which is detailed in paragraph 3.12 of this report. I'd ask Louise if she has anything further to add. I'm happy to answer questions.
Nothing further to add. Yeah,
Members? Agreed? Sorry, we note agree. Note 1 and agree with 3. Okay, thanks. Next one is tennis courts at Seaforth, Annan. Again, members are asked to consider leasing an area of land at the tennis courts, Seaforth Avenue, to Annan, Seaforth Avenue, Annan, to Seaforth Pavilion Tennis Court Sports Group. Paragraph 3.2 advises members that there's a small area of land which is held for the common good, which is included within the grounds of the tennis court. On 22nd October 2014, Annan Common Good Fund Subcommittee agreed in principle for the Annan Common Good section of the tennis courts at Seaforth Avenue, Annan, to be incorporated into any lease agreement between the Council and the Seaforth Pavilion Tennis Court Sports Group. I would also highlight to members that Annandale and SDL Area Committee in this proposal at their meeting on the 21st of January, the Area Committee agreed to recommend to this committee that the areas of non-common good land be leased at less than best consideration. I'll ask Louise again if she's anything further to add, or
nothing further.
Members? Peter?
Sorry, could you just explain what it means by leased at less than best consideration?
Yes, Chair, that means we would essentially lease the ground for £1 per annum, and it would be up to the council as to whether or not it would actually seek to recover that pound from the tenant.
Ronnie?
Yeah, we had a good debate at the Common Good and then equally at the Area Committee, and all these things were teased out then, and so I'm quite happy to move with the recommendation.
Okay, can we note 2.1, 2.2 and agree 2.3? Thank you. No further business. Thank you. Go there.